Greetings, family. I welcome you all to the Black Child Advocacy Network. This is an initiative to enlighten the Black family all around the world, but with particular emphasis to the issues happening in America, about the reality facing our families, the violence facing our families, the institutions that seek to undermine our sovereignty. So this is what this segment really specializes and focuses on. I want to invite you all, if you have not and you want to support this initiative, you can join my Patreon group. The link to that is in the description. And there are multiple tiers of that group. The first tier, you can get a free copy of my book, Fostering False Identity, where it really breaks down the racial caste system in the United States, particularly as it pertains to the Black family. And in addition, you can also get in the third tier, have individual consultations if you do have a legal issue involving your children. I would be more than happy to meet with you all to discuss. But we're going to talk today about Michael Oher and this whole conservatorship debacle that is unfolding in the media and the court of public opinion. And so a lot of things are happening. I'm sure many of you are privy to the story, but I am going to read from an article so that we can discuss piece by piece what is being alleged by Michael Oher, what is being pushed by the media, because, The Blind Side, if you did not watch it, it was a movie that was about white saviors, particularly white women saviors, to poor Black inner city youth. That was the whole theme of the movie. That was the whole purpose, the whole message they were pushing. We can save you, right? And this undermines their narrative. So the media has been very hard to push back on the reality that Michael Oher was being exploited. Before I go to the article, I want you to hear from Michael Oher yourself, because I had never heard this man speak. I'm not a football person, but I have seen the movie, and I certainly had a image of him, because of the portrayal of him. I thought of him generally based on that character. Unfortunately, I never heard him speak, and I wanted to actually hear him speak just to see what this man has to say and how he articulates his own struggle. So if you could watch this real quick.
I think the biggest for me is, being portrayed, not being able to read or write. When you go into a locker room and your teammates don't think that you can learn a playbook, that weighs heavy on someone. And I understand that the movie has given me a position. I'm honored to have the position it's given me, but, you have to understand, before I moved in with the family, I was an All-American. That's what I want the generations behind me to see in this book right here, to understand that you don't have to have someone save you and rescue you to go out and be successful. You got every tool in you. And this book right here is a playbook on life. Looking yourself in the mirror when I was 11, 12-year-old kid, telling myself, hey, everyone around you is in an even worse situation that you're in. So you're going to have to get up and do this thing yourself, and developing a routine right then when I could have given up at 11, 12-year-old.
So he calls himself an All-American. That's not the descriptor that many of us would attribute to him, understanding what America actually represents. But that's what he calls himself. And the way that he basically defines that is someone who can pick himself up and does not need someone to save him. Something that was the opposite of what was depicted of him inside of the movie. You have to understand, when you're having that type of positioning, particularly as a Black man, but any person who is supposed to be subordinate to the white race, when you're taking that type of positioning that I really don't need you, I could do by myself, I don't need you to come rescue me, that in itself is a threat to the system. They want us, in our psychology, in our mental thought patterns about how we interact with the system, they want us to have a mode of dependency. They want us to think that without the help of the white man, we cannot survive, we cannot live, we cannot do for self. And what he's saying is quite the opposite of that. Certainly not what was depicted inside of the movie. So I did want you to just hear from Michael Oher yourself. But let's go over to this article and talk about the conservatorship, the legal implications of a conservatorship, which, when you think about the fact that he was in a conservatorship, something that I don't think anyone really knew this whole time, it's nuts, because he's not someone that's mentally incapacitated. He's not someone who is elderly. He's not someone who's not able to think for himself. And I'm sure you just seen he's a person who can talk, who can articulate his opinions, He's a full person. Yet this person was in a conservatorship this whole time. That was just kept in the dark from most of the public when we saw this movie and this depiction of his relationship with his family. So let's read through this article. What is a conservatorship? The system at the heart of Michael Oher's case explained. 3 years after the height of the Free Britney movement, another controversial high-profile conservatorship has taken limelight, that of Michael Oher and the Tahi family. In a petition filed in Tennessee on August 14th to remove the conservatorship, NFL player Michael Oher alleged that Sean and Lee and Tahi, who he says told him they were adopting him at the age of 18, deceived him about his legal family status and exploited him for financial gain. The family story of adoption is at the center of the movie The Blind Side: Evolution of the Game, which has amassed more than $300 million in box office revenue since its release in 2009. Just my opinion, though, I never understood why this movie was so much hype. It's like one of those movies that really wasn't that good of a movie to me personally. And the fact that it really was able to capture the box office tells you how serious this story that has come out about Michael Oher is to the public. The reason why overwhelmingly white people flocked to this movie and they were so amazed by it, they were so inspired by it, because it goes right to the narrative that they are the ones who are going to save us, that they are the only ones who are in a position to save us, and that feeds their ego. The idea that the white woman was able to be such a commanding presence inside of a black man who was failed by his parents, that feeds their ego. So don't take that lightly. The fact that this movie was a success in itself should be a question of the racism, implicit racism that exists inside of this society. Why do you feel the need to save us? Like, why is that such a focus of yours? You know, it's not something that you act on, but it's something that you obsess on, the image, the idea that you are the only one who could save the world. That's something that should always be questioned when it comes to the white psyche in America. At no point did the Tahis inform Michael that they would have ultimate control of his contracts. And as a result, Michael did not understand that if the conservatorship was granted, he was signing away his right to contract for himself. And I'm very sure as an 18-year-old, if no one specifically told and explained that to you, then yeah, that's something that you would completely be left in the dark about. Particularly if you've grown a trust of people. When you're at that age and you have not grown a healthy skepticism towards people, particularly white people who come inside of this savior mode, you might believe them. You might lean into their authority because we're told that these are authority figures, and you might trust their authority being inside of the ruling class of the race. So I absolutely believe that that is what happened, that these people told him, this is what this is. He read it. How many times, particularly when you were younger, did you read things that were legal documents and really skim them? Whether it was an employment contract, whether it was a college application, a credit card application. Most of us probably did not really read those applications. We believed the people of authority who told us that it said what they said it said. You know, same thing when you sign for a house. You believe the people who tell you what it says. You probably don't read through that. I mean, you should, but you probably don't. So the petition also claimed that Oher never willingly or knowingly signed the contract in which he consents to allowing 20th Century Fox to use his image and life story for movies without any payment whatsoever. So that's something obviously serious. This movie amassed a great fortune, and yet he apparently signed away his right to even collect from that movie that uses his likeness. It's all about his likeness. But this is what I want to focus on. A conservatorship is a legal agreement which one or multiple guardians are appointed to make important decisions, often financial or health related, for someone who is considered unable to make those decisions for themselves. Conservatorships are designed for people, emphasize this, suffering from a mental, psychological, emotional disability that prevents them from making those types of decisions and will suffer harm because of their inability to make those decisions. Now, in any of the media interviews and any of the conversations that we've seen come out from this conversation, and I've been seeing it all up in the news, not once have I heard anyone explain why the Tahis had a conservatorship for him, as opposed to other forms, they've said they couldn't adopt him inside of Tennessee, which turns out to be a lie. Tennessee does allow adult adoptions. We're going to talk about power of attorney, another alternative. Why would they sign something that literally puts him as being mentally, psychological, emotional, having emotional disability, unable to make his own decisions? Why would they have him sign something like that? I mean, on a common sense level, why would you basically legally put him in a situation where he has to fight to prove his capacity to think? How does that make any sense? So it says that in its most healthy form, those are the people that we're trying to protect. And somebody who loves and cares for them will make decisions for them. I have not once heard the Tawhis make a representation that they were trying to protect him from anything, that they were of concern that he wouldn't be able to he wasn't mentally capacitated enough to make his own decisions. So why did they choose this means in order to try to help him supposedly get into Ole Miss? So it says, we contacted lawyers who had told us that we couldn't adopt over the age of 18. Again, that's a lie. Whether or not they know it or not, it's a lie. The only thing we could do is have a conservatorship, he said. We were concerned it was on the up and up, and we made sure his biological mother came to court. New York-based trust and estates attorneys Aswani Pabkar adds that although specific laws surrounding conservatorships differ from state to state, the allegation that a person does not have the capacity to make their own decisions is one that needs to be proved in court. It should be a high bar to me. This person should never have their human right for self-determination taken away and given to a person who's petitioning because this incapacitated person can't handle it on its own. So think about that, the fact that literally these white people show up at a court, hey, this person can't think for himself. We need to make decisions for him. And just like that, the judge granted it without even doing a proper investigation to see if any of this was true. And by the way, if they were making that allegation under oath that he was not mentally capacitated, and that's essentially what the judge believed, then these people were literally lying to the judge. So what exactly happened? That's what I really want to know, that would allow this type of relationship to be created for someone who clearly could think for themselves, who could make decisions for themselves. What happened? Now, this is what I want you to understand. A lot of people are saying that this was for his best interest, but as is stated in this article, the least restrictive way of enabling the Tawhis to support Michael's decision-making would have been through power of attorney. Power of attorney, as defined, allows someone the power to act on your behalf as an agent. They would have applied to college, gotten a driver's license, opened up a bank account, managed his income. They could have done basically everything with a power of attorney. A key difference between power of attorney and conservatorship is that Orr would have been able to sign his own contracts independent of the Tawhis. And I would say to you, they probably wanted that ability to make those decisions for him. That's probably why they went for a conservatorship. Under a conservatorship, however, Orr would not be able to make his own basic decisions. Any decision that he makes is on his own: driver's license, checking account, credit cards, loans, financing, deals, contracts, whatever, would have been null and void, because by getting a conservatorship, the court is basically saying he doesn't have the capacity to make those decisions on his own. And again, did the Tawhis tell the court this under oath? I'm sure they would have had to. So weren't these people lying under oath? Why did the judge believe them without actually having any proof? But again, that's how the justice system works. You tell someone, no, this black person can't think for themselves, and they believe you. So Asher adds that the conservatorship abuse often happens when a person allegedly in need of a conservatorship does not have a clear idea of what kind of agreement they are entering, or had it alleged in his 2011 memoir that the Tawhis told him a conservatorship pretty much means the exact same thing as adopted parents. What I find in my experience is that many times there are explanations given that might seem helpful to convince the person, but are not exactly correct. Orr's case comes less than 2 years after Britney Spears' prominent controversial conservatorship ended in November 2021. Spears was placed under a conservatorship by her father when she was 26, an arrangement that became the center of the Free Britney movement. In both cases, you had an independent court investigators who looked at the situation, when you had a judge who looked at it. And so it was like a double failure. And I would be dying to read the court investigators' report on Michael Orr, because he had shown emphasize this. No sign of doing anything crazy or mental incapacity. So I'm not sure what basis this was given. This is the question, right? What basis was this given? Now, this is kind of beside the point, but I do want to spend just a moment talking about this guy because I can't stand when black people jump in to be the face and try to save the white person who's facing fair scrutiny. Because to me, the whole movie, The Blind Side, is one that has so many racial undertones, so many white savior undertones that all actors, particularly this black man, should have caught on to the fact that this feeds the white ego in America. But clearly this brother did not, and then he has the nerve to jump out and try to be a savior for Miss Sandra Bullock, who is facing some scrutiny because of her decision to take on this movie and to be the white savior inside of the movie. So the man, Quentin Aaron, he defends Sandra Bullock amid Michael Oher's lawsuit. Aaron told the New York Post he was shocked and completely caught off guard by the lawsuit. Having met Michael and the Tohis, I feel like this is a sad, unfortunate turn of events, he added. I can say just from my personal experience from meeting with both parties, I have the utmost respect for all of them over the years. He then says that we're living in a day and age where people are hell-bent on pointing the blame on people and just throwing things out there. That's wrong. Aaron told the Post, it's like saying, let's throw this person to the wolves. And this part right here, he says about Sandra Bullock, she done nothing wrong. That's my girl, and she is going through a really tough time right now. I really feel like they should leave her alone and stop trying to come at her. Stop trying to come for Sandra because you're going to make me mad, and they are going to have to come through me. I just had to throw this one in here because clearly the brother completely missed the mark. It's not about Sandra Bullock. And Sandra Bullock's a grown woman. She can take whatever criticism for a role that she decided to take with clear racial undertones. She should be able to take that type of criticism. But the fact that our people have to be the ones to defend ludicrousy with no comment on what's actually being said, with no comment on the fact that this man, who you know was not mentally incapacitated, was put into a legal status as a mental incapacitated person that has followed him all of these years, yet you want to focus on saving Sandra Bullock. So I just had to throw that in as a aside. Stop being the parrot to our people. Stop being the parrot of the white system. Stop trying to save people from just scrutiny. We're all grown-ups. I'm very sure if you were facing scrutiny, Sandra Bullock would not have come to your defense. Yet here you are, being the Uncle Tom's Cabin. Once again, the Uncle Tom's Cabin who ran to save the white person. You're running to save this white woman for fair scrutiny. No one is saying anything about her personal life. This is all about a choice to depict something that turns out to be a lie, which I think is all fair game. But truthfully, I don't even want to focus so much on The Blind Side. I think there are bigger issues at play here. This is obviously a sad situation. I don't believe a lot of what is being said from the Tohi side, them saying we had no choice. Obviously, you did have choices. Them saying this was for his best interest. Tell me how and why you would keep a conservatorship for a grown man. He's 37 now. Even if you felt like just to get him into Ole Miss, shouldn't you have ended the conservatorship when he graduated or when he left and went into the NFL? But you kept this legal relationship all this time, and now that he's called you out on it, all of a sudden you want to say, oh, we didn't know that he had a problem with it. Did he ask you to dissolve the conservatorship before he went public? I have a hard time believing he didn't. So we're going to leave that aside because I think there's a bigger issue going on, and that is why the Tohis felt the need to put themselves in a legal position to make decisions for him to begin with, and that is the football culture in America, one that is highly exploitative of our people. All sports are exploitative of our people. International football or soccer is highly exploitative. Baseball, basketball, all of these sports where they utilize our talent is highly exploitative of us because they use us for our physical prowess in order to entertain themselves, and that's never going to not have racial undertones inside of it. That's what I want you to understand. When that soccer player / football player, if you're outside of the U.S., had suffered racism. I forget the man's name. I think he was in Spain, and they were calling him like the N-word or something, and everyone was so shocked. Don't be so shocked, because that is the implicit or the ingrained sentiment towards athletes who are African. If you are an athlete who is African, of African descent, you have a role to play, and that is entertainment. And we've seen this so many times with athletes, anytime you cross over or make someone upset, they will remind you of what role they expect you to play. You are not given a role of human being, of a autonomous person. You have a certain role to play. Don't step outside of that role. We've seen this time and time again. So we're going to talk about the football culture in America. I want us to really focus in on the exploitative nature of taking kids, giving them a dream, not that you can own a business, not that you can be a doctor or a lawyer, not that you can be so many things. So things that you aspire to for your mental capacity, for your ability to think and your ability to do things creatively. Not for that, but we're going to put emphasis on what you can do physically. And that is the dream, let's be real, for a lot of our Black African inner city youth. They are given this dream, football dream, basketball dream. I mean, so many times you could talk to some youth and you ask them, what do you want to be? And it's always like, oh, I want to be in the NFL. I want to be in the NFL. I want to be in the NBA. I want to be in this. I want to be in that. No belief in self, that you don't have to rely on your physical, especially because we know that whatever you do physically is not going to be done all of your life. You're going to have a shelf life inside it. If you are drafted into the NBA or the NFL, you have a shelf life. You're not going to be able to do that for the rest of your life. So what do you want to do with your life? You can't do that with your life. You can do that for a season, possibly. So we want to talk about that, the mentality that a lot of our youth are being ingrained inside of this culture in America, to aspire to physical entertainment instead of inspired or have enough self-confidence to think of yourself as more than a physical commodity of entertainment for white people. So I want to talk about that. This is a really good article in the LA Times. The back and forth over the blind side misses the big picture, and so did Michael Lewis, the guy who wrote the book, came out defending the Tawhees, so defending people who, again, I don't care what any person comes out who had to defend these people have to say. How do you explain how they kept a conservatorship that painted or gave Michael Orr a legal status as being mentally inferior, and even if it was to get him into college, you kept it way past when he left college. No one wants to talk about that. They want to talk about how good these people were, how kind they were. No one wants to try to explain that. So what anyone else has to say on these people is irrelevant. But let's go on. I want to read some of this article. Some really good points were made. And let's give the author their due. This is written by a man, Steve Alman, for the LA Times. So The Blind Side to me was never just a book about R and the Tawhees. It was about the entire cultural and economic industry that I would later deem the football industrial complex, which acts to harvest young men, mostly men of color, from this country's impoverished precincts. Because of their physical gifts, they are recruited by private high schools and colleges, segregated from the general population, and exploited for their extraordinary profitable talents. That's precisely what happened to Michael Orr. The Tawhees helped him game the educational system so he could remain in a high school, then convinced him to attend their alma mater, Ole Miss. He was eventually drafted in the first round by the Baltimore Ravens. Promoting football as a form of empowerment. This is a really powerful statement. Promoting football as a form of empowerment based on the saga of a single NFL player is like presenting the lottery as a social program based on the story of a single Powerball winner. And when you see like the drafts that happen with the high school students, it's literally like a Powerball. You see all these people who are so excited to get their child drafted into the NFL or the NBA. But this is an important thing. This is not a social program. And it's certainly not empowerment. If you think about what happens when our youth go into the NFL, the NBA, the whatever else sport you want to do, I don't know what the acronym is for baseball, probably ABA something, I don't know. Hockey, what else? Soccer, whatever else you want to talk about. If you think about what they're being drafted into, it's First of all, censorship. Think about what happened to Kyrie Irving when he simply pointed out the fact that he didn't want to get vaccinated. Think about what happened to Kyrie Irving whenever he posted the Hebrews the Negroes movie. Think about so many people, LeBron James. Think about all these people who have no voice. Think about these people who can't express their own opinions, who are beholden to the narratives that are given to them. These people, although they're rich, although some of them are, not all of them are rich, but although many of the big ones are rich, they don't have power. They are puppets, okay? They are commodities for entertainment. The power is an illusion. So people who have tried to make this a form of empowerment are missing the mark. They're not thinking logically. Empowerment is the ability to say what you want to say, stand for what you want to stand for, and not have to back off of your convictions because of consequences. And that's something that these athletes don't have. Show me an athlete that has not apologized for any time that they've stepped out of bounds according to the system. They have to apologize because they're robbed of their autonomy once you join those sports. So it's not empowerment, despite the fact that we teach that to our children and our youth. It's not empowerment. Money is not empowerment, okay? Money is not empowerment. Business can be a sense of empowerment, but working in someone else's business in itself is not empowerment. So it says, it's true that players choose to compete and at the highest levels receive huge salaries, but the power dynamics remain eerily familiar. A predominantly black workforce generates huge revenue, first for universities, then for wealthy white team owners. Wealthy white owners. Pro-black players risk grievous injury. Nearly a third of them will suffer brain damage, according to the NFL's own actuaries. The average length of a player's career is barely 3 seasons. The odds that a high school player will ever play professionally is approximately 1 in 1,300. How can it be that so many of our people understand the implications as far as health, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but also as far as the likelihood of you even being able to have a long career? You're not going to, this 3 seasons is the average, they said. 1 in 1,300, those are the odds that a high school player will get to play professionally. So how does that make sense for us to push for this for our children, or even encourage them to push for it? Let's be real. Some of us think, oh, we have to support whatever our children's dreams are. No, you can guide your children to make better decisions. You can guide your children. You can give them the odds, let them know that, hey, you need to do something that's not going to destroy your brain. You could do that as a parent. You should do that as a parent. Although we live in a society that wants parents to have a hands-off approach, that is your responsibility as a parent to do. But despite all of that, many of us encourage our children. We don't want to talk about the odds. We want to encourage them to focus solely on sports that are for physical prowess and not anything for mental and for entrepreneurship. Like, we're not trying to focus them on things that we know will keep them going and their families going for generations and generations to come. Think about all of the high school athletes that think that they're going to make it. Think about how many don't make it. Why are we not being serious with our youth about the implications of focusing solely on your physical and not on your mental? So one more thing I want to emphasize about the injuries, about when it happens with football. Because so many of our people still do send our children to Little League. So many of our people still do engage in the culture. But you have to understand that culture is one that has serious implications for your children. New study links playing youth football to a later brain damage. If children play tackle football before they are 12 and continue to play through high school, they may be putting their brains at risk. The study says that 214 former football players, including 43 who only played at the high school level, 103 who played in college, and 68 who played professionally. Out of them, the scientists found that playing tackle football before the age of 12 increased the odds of problems with behavioral regulation, apathy, and executive functioning later in life by 2-folds, and the odds of suffering symptoms of depression 3-folds. That the mean age of the study participants was 51. Past studies have pointed to the risk of playing tackle football at young ages. In 2015, the BU team found that among a cohort of 40 ex-NFL players, Those who started tackle football before 12 showed structural changes to the brain's white matter, which coordinates communication between different brain regions. That same year, a study in neurology concluded that greater life cognitive impairment was associated with ex-NFL players who participated in tackle football before 12. For a 2016 study published in the journal Radiology, researchers conducted neuroimaging tests on 25 football players, youth football players between the age of 8 and 13. They found a significant relationship between head impacts and changes to white matter. This is what many of us are signing our children up for. Excuse me if I come off judgmental, but to me, at this point, with what we know as parents, as Black parents, if what we know, with what we've seen, with how we understand that this industry is one that's going to rob our children of their tongue, we should not be putting our children in these sports. We should not be encouraging it. And the fact is, when it comes back to the Tauheeds, because that's what the whole conversation is about, they did this. They sold Michael Orr, sold his legacy, sold him to Hollywood because they wanted to take place inside of a highly exploitative industry, wanted him to be a commodity and them to be the face that's going to receive praise because they saved this commodity from himself, saved him from his community. That's the messaging they always want us to think. We'll save you from yourselves. So let that resonate. There's a bigger issue at play. It's not just conservatorships. It's the issue of the exploitative relationship that many people have entered into by entering into professional sports, particularly at a young age. One that is selling our children a dream that is one without giving them promise for a future. One that is many times temporary, even if you're able to get into professional sports. One that is not promising for their future and for future generations. One that could leave them mentally incapacitated, physically incapacitated. One that is a danger to them and their mental health. Let that resonate along with what the Tauheeds did. The Tauheeds signed him up for this. The Tauheeds encouraged it. They got to receive praise for it while he was the one that was on the front lines risking his physical life so that they could make decisions about what he does, what contracts he can sign, what things he can and cannot do. All of this for the football culture that exists in the United States. So that's all I have for this video. Definitely want to hear your thoughts. Again, this is the Black Child Advocacy Network. I will see you all in the next video.